She demanded 50-50 of all my assets. I refused, but not for the reason she thought. This is the story of how her greed and a single misjudgment saved me.
They say the past doesn't haunt you unless you let it. That's a lie people tell themselves so they can sleep at night. The past has a way of crawling under your skin, settling in your bones, whispering in your ear when the lights go out. Mine wore a suit, carried a pen, and signed away 12 years of my life in a courthouse where nobody even remembered my name by the time lunch rolled around. Maria here. I was 27 when I married the first time, young enough to think forever meant something, old enough to believe I'd figured out the rules. He was charming, successful, quick with promises. He handed me a prenup I barely skimmed, swore it was just formality. I didn't ask questions. Love makes you blind, they say. I wasn't blind. I was dazzled, and it did the same damage. 12 years later, I learned how a document can bleed you dry without spilling a drop of blood. He left with the house, the savings, the retirement. I walked away with a folding chair, a couple of pans, and the kind of lesson you don't forget. Courtrooms echo. The scrape of chairs, the shuffle of papers, the clipped voices of lawyers. Those sounds stay with you. I still hear them when I close my eyes. After that, I promised myself I'd never be the fool again. Love? Fine. Companionship? Sure. But protection was non-negotiable. A woman who doesn't protect herself is a woman waiting to get cut open and left to bleed. I built a shell after the divorce. Retail management paid the bills, kept me moving, kept me tired. Days blurred into weeks, weeks into years. I kept busy, so I wouldn't have to think about the emptiness that had replaced the future I'd imagined. Nights were harder. Nights were when the memories pressed in, reminding me how quickly trust can turn into chains. Then Kevin walked into my life. Kevin wasn't like the others. He didn't swagger. He didn't boast. He carried himself like a man who didn't need to prove a damn thing to anyone. Tall, solid, eyes that had seen too much but didn't flinch. There was discipline in the way he moved, a kind of steadiness that felt rare in a world full of men looking for shortcuts. He'd been Army, years abroad, carrying the weight of orders and consequence. That leaves a mark on a man, a kind of gravity. And he was a surgeon, hands steady enough to hold a life in the balance, sharp enough to cut where it mattered. That kind of focus makes a woman feel safe, like she's in the presence of someone who doesn't just talk about control, he owns it. Safe. That word hooked me. I hadn't felt it in years. Our courtship wasn't whirlwind, but it didn't need to be. Kevin wasn't in a hurry. He didn't push, didn't pull, just let things unfold. For the first time since my divorce, I felt the ground under me hold steady instead of shifting. He talked about loyalty, sacrifice, building a life together like it was a given, not a gamble. When he proposed, it felt like the universe was giving me a second chance. The ring was 4 carats of promise, catching the light like fire trapped in stone. He slid it onto my finger, and for a moment I believed in fairy tales again. I let myself smile, let myself cry, let myself imagine the version of me who never had to flinch at the word courtroom. But shadows don't care about diamonds. Even as I said yes, even as I wrapped my arms around him and let myself feel the safety I'd been craving, I felt the old ghost stirring. My ex's smirk, the judge's pen, the hollow echo of being left with nothing. They trailed me like smoke you can't wash out of your clothes. I wanted to believe Kevin was different, and maybe he was, but belief had cost me once before. I'd promised myself it wouldn't cost me again. So I smiled wider, kissed him deeper, held the weight of that ring like it was the key to a future I might actually trust. But deep down, behind the tears and the joy, another voice whispered. A colder one. The past never forgets. And I knew one way or another, I wasn't going to let it repeat itself.
Hey, I'm Kevin. I never thought I'd get married, to be honest. Not because I didn't want to, but because life never gave me much space for it. The Army kept me moving for years. Bases overseas, deployments that blurred one into the next, a job that meant packing up just when I'd started to settle in. Relationships didn't exactly thrive under those conditions. You learn to travel light. By the time I left service and went into medicine full-time, I was in my late 30s. Most of the people I knew were already married with kids, some even divorced and starting over. Me? I was still learning how to enjoy having a fridge that stayed plugged in for more than 6 months at a time. Then Maria came along. She wasn't like the people I'd dated before. She had this grounded quality, practical but warm. She worked retail, managed a team, dealt with people all day long, and somehow still had the patience to listen when I vented about a 12-hour surgery shift. She made everyday things, grocery shopping, grabbing coffee, feel lighter, simpler. I liked that about her. My life had been built around discipline, long hours, and big sacrifices. With her, I didn't feel like I had to be Dr. Kevin Hayes, former Army officer. I could just be Kevin. When I decided to propose, it wasn't a big dramatic epiphany. It was quieter than that. I've been thinking about it for months, turning it over in my head between shifts, picturing her sitting across from me 10, 20 years down the line. She fit, not just into my schedule, but into my life, into the parts of me I didn't show anyone else. I picked out the ring myself, for carats. Maybe more than I should have spent, but I wanted her to have something that told her exactly how serious I was. I remember the way her eyes widened when she saw it, the way her hand trembled a little when I slid it onto her finger. That look, that's the kind of thing you hold on to when you've been waiting your whole life to find someone worth building a future with. So when she said yes, I thought we were on the same page. For the first time in years, I let myself relax. I let myself picture more than just the next shift, the next deployment, the next move. I pictured a house that stayed ours, holidays spent together, kids maybe. Stability. It felt good, better than I'd expected. Like all those years of waiting, of sacrifice, of moving from one posting to the next had finally led me to something solid. That's what Maria was to me then, solid. A partner. Someone who knew what loss looked like, but wasn't afraid to try again. I admired that in her. A lot of people get burned and stay bitter. Maria carried her scars, sure, but I thought it made her strong. I thought it made her the kind of person who understood commitment the way I did. Looking back, maybe I was seeing what I wanted to see. But in those first days after the proposal, I wasn't second-guessing a thing. I was all in, and I believed, really believed, she was too.
The thing about fear is it doesn't knock before it comes in. It slips under the door, settles in your lungs, and makes itself at home. Mine wore the shape of a signature on a document, 12 years old. No matter how many times I told myself Kevin was different, the old fear kept scratching at the back of my mind. So I did what any smart woman would do. I dressed that fear up as logic. Logic's polite. Logic gets invited to dinner. Fear just makes people uncomfortable. When I finally brought it up to Kevin, I didn't let the word prenup hang in the air like a threat. I wrapped it in silk. It's just protection, I said, smiling the kind of smile that hides the sharp edges. For both of us. You know, a safety net. He blinked, slow, like he hadn't heard me right. The hurt was all over his face, plain as a bruise. For a second, I almost faltered. Almost. But then I remembered the courthouse, the empty apartment, the humiliation of starting over with nothing but a retail paycheck and some hand-me-down furniture. And just like that, my resolve snapped back into place. Kevin didn't understand. Of course he didn't. Men like him never do. He thought loyalty was enough. Thought a vow could keep the wolves away. That's the kind of thinking that gets you gutted when the papers get filed. So I leaned in. I twisted the knife just enough. If you're against it, I said softly, tilting my head like I was the reasonable one. What does that say? That you're already planning for divorce. It was a cheap shot and I knew it, but it worked. His jaw tightened, his eyes narrowed, and I could see him starting to doubt himself. Doubt's a powerful thing. It makes people question their own footing even while you're standing firm. I told him stories about my first marriage, painted myself as a victim, the one left with scars he couldn't see. I didn't lie. I just left out the parts that made me look foolish. Gaslighting, they call it now. Back then I called it survival. If I didn't frame the story my way, I'd lose the chance to frame it at all. I made him feel selfish for resisting. Clever trick, that one. All you have to do is tilt the mirror until the other person sees their reflection as ugly. I told him his refusal meant he was hiding something, that he must be the one planning an exit strategy. It wasn't true, but the beauty of gaslighting is it doesn't need to be. It just needs to sound plausible when you say it with enough conviction. And I said it with conviction. He looked at me like I was someone he didn't recognize. Maybe I was. Or maybe he was just seeing the version of me I'd always been, the woman who'd promised herself she'd never be left stripped bare again. The woman who knew love was fragile, but contracts were steel. I pressed harder, told him we couldn't move forward with the wedding until it was settled. Every time he pushed back, I pushed harder. It wasn't cruelty, it was desperation dressed up in high heels. I wasn't going to let history repeat itself. I'd rather stall the wedding, risk his anger, even risk losing him, than step into another marriage without my defenses in place. Inside, I could feel the panic clawing. I'd tell myself I was calm, reasonable, just being practical. But underneath, my hands shook. Because if he didn't agree, if he walked away, I'd be back where I started, alone, working late shifts, counting change in the dark. I couldn't let that happen. So I smiled, softer this time, and slid my hand over his like I was sealing the deal with warmth instead of pressure. "This is just smart, Kevin," I whispered. "It doesn't mean I love you any less. It means I love us enough to protect what we have." But love wasn't what I was protecting. It was me. And if he couldn't see that, then maybe he didn't know me at all.
I'm not a lawyer, and I've never pretended to be one. But I do know when a conversation has stopped being about love and started being about numbers. That's what it felt like when Maria put the prenup in front of me. She had the lines rehearsed, I could tell. 50-50 of everything. Protection for both of us. Just being smart. She said it like we were negotiating a lease, not planning a marriage. I didn't blow up. That's not my way. I just sat there listening, trying to make sense of it. The longer she talked, the clearer it became. She wasn't asking me to sign, she was demanding it. Like the wedding couldn't exist without it. I pushed back, but not with anger. I told her I didn't think we needed it. That if you're going into marriage already carving up the assets, then maybe you're not really ready for marriage. But she didn't hear it that way. The moment I hesitated, the moment I didn't jump to grab a pen, her eyes narrowed. I could almost see the gears turning in her head. She thought I was refusing because I didn't want her to have half. Like I was hoarding my assets, guarding my territory. That wasn't it at all. In my mind, the whole point of marriage was that nothing was mine anymore. It was ours. I didn't need a contract to make me give. My word was enough. But Maria didn't see it that way. To her, my refusal to sign was proof I had something to hide. Proof I was planning an escape route. It was like we were speaking two different languages. The more I tried to explain, the more she twisted it back on me. Told me I was being selfish. Told me if I really loved her, I'd agree without hesitation. She made it sound like my resistance was the red flag, not the fact that she was holding our wedding hostage over paperwork. That's when it hit me. We weren't negotiating. We weren't even disagreeing. We were on different planets, staring at each other through glass. I didn't raise my voice. Didn't accuse her. I just sat back, looked at the woman I thought I knew, and realized I couldn't do it. Not this way. So I ended it. I told her straight. If trust wasn't enough for her, then we didn't have what it took. I took the ring back, not out of spite, but because the promise it was supposed to stand for had already been broken. That's when she panicked. Tears, begging, backpedaling. She said she didn't mean it like that she only wanted to protect herself. But it was too late. I'd spent my whole life in places where hesitation costs lives. Once you see the truth, you don't unsee it. And the truth was simple. She didn't trust me. Not with her future, not with her heart, not with her fear. And without trust, marriage is nothing more than a contract with flowers on top. Only after it was over, after the ring was in my pocket and the words were said, did I finally tell her what I believed. That marriage was supposed to be permanent, sacred, that I'd been ready to share everything I had. No conditions, no fine print. That if, God forbid, it ever ended, she still wouldn't have been left empty-handed. Because that's what partners do. I meant every word. But by then, the damage was done. Maria didn't want to hear it. Or maybe she did, but too late. Either way, the look on her face told me everything I needed to know. She'd gambled on control and lost the only thing she couldn't replace. Us. And me? I walked away. Not because I wanted to, but because I had to.
Panic has a taste. Bitter, metallic, like a penny left too long on your tongue. That's what filled my mouth when Kevin slipped the ring off my finger and set it on the table like it was nothing more than loose change. I wasn't ready for that. I thought he'd argue, maybe sulk, maybe bend after a few days of silence. Men don't usually walk away from 4 carats from the life we were sketching in pencil outlines. They talk, they fight, they compromise. But Kevin, he just ended it. Clean, sharp, surgical. Like cutting out a tumor. I cried, of course. Told him he misunderstood. That I didn't mean it the way it sounded. That I was only protecting myself. The words poured out, fast and messy, like water rushing through a crack in the dam. But his eyes stayed steady, cold in a way I'd never seen before. That's what scared me most. Because deep down, I knew I'd overplayed my hand. I thought the prenup was leverage, a line I could hold until he caved. Instead, it was a lit match, and I'd thrown it straight into the kind of man who didn't tolerate fire. He told me his truth after it was already too late. Said marriage was supposed to be permanent, sacred. That he was ready to share everything he had with me, no fine print, no contracts. That even if things went wrong, I'd never have been left with nothing. And that's when it hit me, like a fist straight to the ribs. I'd been fighting a ghost. I saw his resistance as greed, as selfishness, because that's what my ex had taught me to see. But Kevin wasn't my ex. He never was. He wasn't guarding his fortune. He was guarding the one thing he thought mattered, trust. I twisted it. I twisted him. And in doing so, I snapped something that couldn't be mended. My mind raced back to that courtroom all those years ago, the gavel, the hollow echo of loss. I'd sworn I'd never let that happen again. And in my rush to protect myself, I turned the one man who might have truly loved me without conditions into an enemy I couldn't fight. It's almost funny, in a sick way. I thought I was shielding myself from ending up alone. Instead, I built the very trap I feared most and walked into it blind. After he left, the apartment felt different. Kevin was a man of decisions. Once he made them, there was no turning back. That's why he'd been a soldier, a surgeon. That's why people trusted him with their lives. And that's why I lost him. I told myself I was practical, cautious, smart. But underneath it all, I was selfish. Narcissistic, maybe. Demanding half of a life I hadn't helped build. Pretending it was fair. Pretending it was love. Kevin saw through it. And when he did, he walked. Now I'm left with the taste of panic and the echo of his words. Permanent. Sacred. Partners. Words I should have believed. Words I should have trusted. Instead, I chased paper and percentages, and all I've got to show for it is a bare finger and an empty apartment. People like to think they can rewrite the past if they just explain themselves enough times. But the past doesn't care. Kevin made his choice, and I made mine. The difference is, his choice left him free. Mine left me here, staring at shadows, whispering to myself in the dark. I fucked up,